Hello everyone and welcome to the New York Empoleon's draft analysis video, our second one recently, this one for the PCL Season 4. And of course, it's the PCL. I gotta talk about it real quick. So what happened before and what's happening now is probably going to be a relevant question on most of your minds if you actually followed any of my content before or the PCL in general. So basically, this is not what I expected. Ooh, that was fun. This is not what I expected. So the PCL the season was canceled mostly due to disagreements between the coaches who were part of it and the administration of the league, with regards to what was acceptable for Dynamax rules. And a lot of questions arose regarding whether or not like the item restrictions made sense, the turn restrictions made sense, but ultimately I think it was the fact that a lot of coaches were dropping for a lack of enjoyment with the timer in the league as a whole that ended up causing the league to shut down, which at least was their official reason. And I was having fun. I loved my team. I was actually having a blast with it. But unfortunately, sometimes that's how it goes. Things just fall apart. There's been a bunch of leagues in Gen 8 that I've started that have not finished for one reason or another, and that was just the first of many. And now I didn't expect the PCL to be coming back, and with it coming back, of course, many of the coaches who were originally here were not brought back, but there is a small core of people who were excited and enjoying the season who they decided to bring back. So there's only 10 coaches in the league this season at all. That's it. And I think it's still like 8 or 9 weeks. Like, it's still a regular length season, but there's only 10 coaches. There's, I believe, one division. You know, top 5 or 6 are going to make playoffs. It's pretty simple. But in a surprise twist, we are allowing Gigantamax. So last time it was Dynamax, and it was tier 3 or below. You just named one, and then you had Dynamax first turn. There were some item restrictions, etc., etc. But now it's unrestricted Gigantamax, which, I mean, I talk about it a little bit in my PBAL video. That's not a format I would necessarily have gone with, especially when the last time the cause of the issue was created by the Dynamax issues. That doesn't mean that I think that Gigantamax inherently can't be a fun mechanic, but it's definitely a centralizing mechanic. It's definitely something that, if you're going to do, you want to make sure you're ready for people to fight back about. And I just don't know if, given last time how this league was run, that's something that we would want to be bringing in. But here we are. The draft's over. Obviously, I've already got my analysis being recorded. So clearly I've finished the draft. And yeah, we're just going to roll with it and see how it goes. So I'm doing 2 leagues right now that are both Gigantamax, free Gigantamax leagues. Like, you can just, whenever, no item restriction, do whatever you want. But your Mon cannot Dynamax, it must Gigantamax, which means you are locked into that GMax move, etc. And stuff like that. Now, this league, there's a couple of differences between the two of them. This league allows sub passing, the other league allows strictly dry passing. I think I got that wrong in my draft analysis video. That one only allows dry passing, no sub passing. This one is a sub passing, no stat passing. I don't know, no stat passing, but Gigantamax, sure, rules. We make them here, and they totally make sense. But this time, I did not get first overall pick. I got 5th pick, which was pretty good. I mean, out of 10, you're probably going to get a pretty broken team no matter what, just because there's not as many people like drafting, which is fair. And someone took Rapid Strike or Shifu really early, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize we were allowing that. But I'm going to take Single Strike or Shifu because it seems fun, and I've never used it before, and I have no idea what exactly it's going to be able to do. This was drafted probably 3 weeks ago, so before I really understood what Urshifu was going to be able to do. Now that Urshifu Single Strike has been banned to Ubers, I think I'm way more excited to use it than I was even when I drafted it, just because it does seem really good. Obviously, U-turn, Sucker Punch, Stab Dark move that always crits is super cool. Stab Close Combat's great. It's got Knockoff. It's got all sorts of tools and accessories to be using throughout this season, which I'm super excited for. Fighting Dark, it's I mean, you always have to have a fairy check, right? And I'll talk about mine in a second because I like tried to grab the best fairy check I possibly could in order to facilitate this thing sweeping. But what I really wanted from this was I looked at what it could do, and I was like, okay, I want a team that has momentum because that seems like a fun play style, and I want a team with priority because playing on a timer, you want to be able to get that chip damage, finish off mons. You don't want to like use a chipped mon necessarily to like strictly set up. But that being said, I like the opportunity to set up. This thing has bulk up, it has stuff like that. So I decided I was going to go with their Shifu first pick because I wanted to try it. I've never used it before. Obviously, it's like never even been legal, and I'm not even sure it will be legal in most leagues moving forward. So this may be my only chance to try it, so I'm definitely going to give it its fair due and just like see what happens with it. But next up, after Urshifu, we actually picked up the Scizor. Like I said, I did not want to miss a premier fairy check. I needed a good steel type, like a good steel type that could check a fairy in a pinch. And while most fairies did get Mystical Fire, Scizor's ability to bullet punch things to death is just amazing. Its ability to U-turn is outstanding. It got dual wing beat, and yes, we are allowing the moves from the DLC in this league, so dual wing beat is totally legal. This thing seems super fun. There's no hidden powers anymore. Yes, it lost Pursuit, but again, it's not really my psychic answer right now. I've got Urshifu for that, and I've got plenty of other psychic answers coming down the pipeline, so Scizor is a fairy answer primarily, and a good one, because again, you think they're going to switch their fairy in, but maybe they'll switch their ground type in, you know, like whatever. U-turn is just so free, gets me into my other mons, and I really wanted something that was just going to be able to take those hits and deal with them. So Urshifu Scizor gave me so much momentum, so much priority, so much power on the physical side, and I was like, look, let's slow it down a little bit. Let's grab Rotomwash, really reliable. I was shocked this thing lasted till round 3, I'm not going to lie. But I decided to grab Rotom and pair it with Scizor, because Mystical Fires, Flamethrowers from, you know, the Slurpuffs or whatever, coming your way, Fire Punches, nothing. Rotomwash does not care. Eats those hits up for days. Scizor can come in on the grass type attacks aimed at Rotomwash. They pair so well together, and both these things can handle fairies in a pinch for the Urshifu. I needed a couple things at this point, obviously, but I really liked this momentum core. I like the fact that 2 of my mons have defog. I like the fact that this team has like good statusing. It's got priority. It's got like lots of options. So I was like, okay, this seems really solid for the start. And a lot of the GMax mons that I wanted were getting taken, and I figured it was about time I took mine, since I didn't want to miss a chance on getting a good Tier 1 GMax, because I do feel like the difference between Tier 1 GMax and Tier 2 GMax is notable, except when in the other league they have Tier 2 GMax Lapras, at which point it's just a Tier 1 that is free. But anyway, so I decided I was going to grab GMax Hatterene, which was still available. Seemed super fun. I needed a fighting type answer because, as you can see, fighting type kind of wrecked the rest of my roster because I didn't have anything that resisted it. And so GMax Hatterene gives me that quad resistance to fighting, gives me a fairy type, gives me a psychic type, gives me a magic bounce, so I don't even have to use defog if I don't want to, gives me a trick room option if I really wanted it, because Scizor can love some trick room if the team is if the opposing team is fast enough. Scizor can love some trick room, and you'll see that trick room becomes a pretty centralizing part of my draft plan as we move through this draft analysis, because I've never used trick room, but this is a slow meta, and there's lots of really good slow options. So I figured, yes, I can't stat pass, but I don't have to GMax the first time I'm in, and I can just bring in Hatterene, Trick Room, Baton Pass, or Red Card, or Eject Button, or whatever, and get out into another mon. And again, I'm not quite at the point where we're going to talk about those yet, but you'll see that Trick Room is a big part of it. Trick Room Hatterene alone, you just Trick Room, then you GMax, just like starts going ham against other teams. It's pretty ridiculous. So I love the idea of this thing. I haven't used it before, but I'm very intrigued by it. It's going to be a solid mon on the roster. Gave me a special attacker where my team was mostly physical. I mean, Rotom's special, but it's not really offensive unless you're running like a nasty plot set. Whereas Hatterene just gives you such a strong special attacker. Yes, there's no item restriction on the GMax, so I can run Life Orb. I can run, I can run whatever. I can run Choice Specs and then GMax and not be Choice Specs anymore. So really solid on this GMax mon. I figured it was worth the extra few points to make the rest of my roster a little bit tougher, since I took the Scizor as a Tier 1 and then this as a Tier 1 GMax. But I figured the restriction on the rest of my roster is actually not going to be that restrictive because I got such a good top end that I can bring every week and not feel bad about. Next up, I decided to grab another fighting type check in Salah Sol. It gave me a Toxic Spikes, absorber, gave me a fire type, which I didn't have before, gave me a another really solid fairy answer, in my opinion. So, again, really to try to facilitate Shifu to do as much damage as possible, you want to have a couple mons that can come in on the fairies, and Salah Sol does a fantastic job of that. Again, like Scizor, can resist the fairy type attacks that are coming its way, and generally the coverage fairies have don't overlap with what Salah Sol's weak to. I mean, obviously, like if you draft a Mawile notwithstanding, but Mawile also doesn't want to sit down and stare Salah Sol in the face, since Fire Blast is going to hurt. Now this thing, again, I really like Salah Sol in this gen. I think it's actually really good with its speed tier, its ability to toxic literally everything that comes in. I think everyone kind of knows what Salah Sol does at this point. It's a really solid mon. I've used it before, and I really liked it, and I want to use it again effectively and see where I can take it this time. It is my fastest mon on the roster. That's not going to change, and it is the only thing that I have throughout the rest of my roster that's over base 100, so I do have to watch out for that and keep that in mind as my opponent's prep, since their base 100s will almost always outspeed my entire roster. But again, like I said, I kind of went hard Trick Room for a lot of their mons, and we'll talk about that as we move forward. So the next mon, in order to help facilitate that base 100 speed tier issue that I might have, I decided to get Webs. Again, Webs with her Shifu gives it the ability to run band, gives it just the ability to outspeed things, which is super nice. Araquanid seemed really, really good on this team. Doesn't share a weakness with Rotomwash, which I thought was really helpful in facilitating it, and also makes it, it's super bulky, takes a ground type attack away from the Salah Sol. And again, the Rotom was the only thing I had that was resistant to ground, so I wanted another ground resistance. And obviously Rotom technically is weak to ground if you have Mold Breaker or something. But Araquanid just gives me straight up resistance, gives me a strong water type spammer. Webs gives me Mirror Coat if I really wanted to run it. So I think Araquanid, underrated Weber, personally. And that being said, it's a really good Weber, and people don't usually think of it as a bad mon. So Araquanid, I think, again, also put it under Trick Room, and it can do a lot of work. Speaking of things under Trick Room that can do a lot of work, I took my Dragon type here as Drampa. Maybe a little early in the draft to pick up Drampa, but things were starting to be like, I want to leave open my options here. And I'll talk about, there's a bunch of different ways that I was thinking about going with the end of the draft. There's one mon that I ended up taking last overall that I'll talk about, that I knew I was going to take. But then everything else, I was like, okay, right here is my chance to choose. Am I taking the extra electric type in Boltund and going fast, or am I taking some slow mons and really pushing the Trick Room element of the team? And I decided Drampa was going to be worth picking up either way. It's a cheap dragon that has crazy coverage, is super solid, and I already have Hatterene if I don't go anything else Trick Room. That's at two mons that benefit from it. Hatterene comes in, sets it up, gets a couple kills because it's a GMax, dies. Drampa comes in, gets a couple more kills, and the game's basically over. So I figured even just the one mon that utilizes it, sort of, and Drampa can take one hit usually with its decent bulk, so it just gave me that option, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna grab Drampa here. But moving forward, I kind of went with, do I take the fast electric type, or do I go with the slow mode? And I actually decided I was going to take Claydol here at this point, which didn't... It was fit a speed tier I didn't have yet, which was super nice, somewhere between Scizor and Rotomwash, at that 75 speed tier. And gave me Rocks, which I realized at this point I don't have at all. And my only stat or hazard right now is Webs, and so I decided I need a Rocker. Gives me another Trick Room setter, which I thought was actually super useful. Gives me another Fighting Resist, which I thought was also nice to have. And it's got, like Drampa, pretty good coverage. I like it a lot in this gen. It's got Spin. It's my only spinner so far, so everything else a Defog or Bounce. Spin gives me the ability to set up my Webs or Rocks and keep them up, which is nice. And I just liked the idea of having a mon that wasn't, it didn't close options for me at this point. And again, in the draft at this point, I was looking at a couple of different things, and this thing did not shut down any options that I was going to have. So I took it here just to try to keep open what I wanted to do. I looked, nobody sniped me, so that didn't make my choice any easier. And the choice really came down at this moment in time to, do I take a Trick Room Sweeper, Trick Room Abuser, or do I take a Fast Mon? And I opted to go with Hyperior. Hyperior is so strong under Trick Room, and I mean base 140 attack is just insane, and it's so powerful. It's got another rocker that I didn't have, which I needed. I mean, I definitely wanted two rockers. I don't want just one rocker on my roster. And it's got just pretty good coverage, honestly, all things considered. And Solid Rock allows it to take, you know, a hit, but if it's under Trick Room, it almost doesn't even need to. It just kind of kills things. And now that I've taken this, now that I get the extra rocker, I get the extra Trick Room abuser, I decided I was going to take one more Mon that could get Trick Room. I decided to take Trevenant here. Again, really not forced the issue, but went hard on the Trick Room side of things. Trevenant, it's another Trick Room setter. It's a pretty solid ghost type that I didn't have. Has access to Poltergeist and is one of the physical ghost types that I think makes best use of it. Maybe it's not Alola Marowak, but it's pretty solid at making use of Poltergeist. And that's just good information about items and stuff that other people can use. You know, good grass type that I didn't have. So it filled a lot of niches that my team kind of wanted out of a tier 5 slot, which I was like, yeah, okay, like, sure. And all I had points for left was a tier 5, and this is where I took the Pokemon that everyone knows I'm about to take. It's not surprising to anybody. My last pick's Noctowl. I just used it through that entire league with Jolt, and you guys know I love this thing. I had a blast with it. Super fun to use. So I decided to pick it up one more time here. The other league that I had it in died, didn't end up finishing, which I was super sad about. But this is a Mon that is way overlooked in competitive, and Jolt and I used it and made it to finals and brought it to finals and thought it was actually a really solid Mon for the matchup. I think that speaks volumes to why it's not a tier 5. But if nothing else, I'm going to prove this league again that this thing should probably not be tier 5. I am super excited to use this thing. Obviously, I love Noctowl this gen. I never loved Noctowl before. I'll be honest. My favorite game of all time is Crystal. I've played Gen 2 many, many times. I never had any love for Hoothoot. I never had any love for Noctowl. But this gen, this thing has grown on me so much, and I love it. And this thing is so good. And I don't know. It's just super fun to use. I have nothing bad to say about it. It's super bulky on the special side. Plus, it gets nasty plot, hits like a truck. You know, like what else? What else do you have to say about it? But anyway, I will leave it there. This team seems super fun. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know if it's as like immediately competitive as my other one. It's a little bit gimmicky with the Trick Room side of things, and doesn't seem to have that top end quite like the other league with the Mew Como-O screens team. But Shifu, Scizor, Hatterene, Rotomwash seem like quite a top end on their own right, and the fill out, having webs, having the Trick Room option, so like one of the two obviously can come each week or both, depending on the matchup, and being able to just like do things. I don't know, I feel like this team has the momentum down, you know, especially those first 3, but there's a bunch of baton passers just like throughout the thing, you know, like that have momentum or flip turn or whatever. I don't actually think anything on my roster gets flip turn, but this team, it just seems fun, and whatever happens. I'm excited to use it, and we'll see how PCL Season 4 goes. Fingers crossed there's not as many drops and people are just going to have their battles and have fun with it, since at the end of the day, it's a game. You know, if GMax isn't your style, that's fine. Play for 9 weeks, really make sure you know that it's not your style, and then stop. Play a different league that doesn't allow it. I mean, that's like basically how it's going to go down. I don't know if I'm going to love it. Between these 2 leagues, I'll definitely get a really good sample size of things, but yeah, we'll see. So anyway, I will catch you guys back here next week as we start our season off with week 1 against the Bridgeport Boombursts, which I think is a fun name. And yeah, so that's when you guys will be checking both these leagues out, since I will now be uploading the PBL and the PCL, PBAL and the PCL for the rest of the summer, which is probably a good thing. If you haven't checked out my TBL stuff, go check out my Twitch channel or the TBL Twitch channel. Link should be in the description below. And yeah, that's going to be it for this video. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all back here with week 1 of the PCL. Take care, everybody.